All right, what's going on, guys? Connor on Shane, welcome back. We are going to be talking about Bitcoin L2's today because this is a fairly new narrative that I still feel like is very slept on at the current moment. And we're going to dive into just the whole narrative in and of itself. And we're going to talk about a bunch of different L2's that I personally think have a lot of potential going into this bull run. So let's just jump in. So obviously we got layer ones, and we're gonna go down to layer twos here. So when it comes to Bitcoin DeFi, a major narrative has actually been, smart contract platforms basically on top of Bitcoin, whether that is smart contract platforms or literal L1s being built on Bitcoin itself. That's been a very big narrative. Obviously, you guys are familiar with BRC20s, SRC20s, stamps, anything and everything of that nature. But in more recent development, there's been a lot more attention focusing on L2s built on Bitcoin. And I'm going to show you guys a bunch of stats here, just, not even full of statistics, but just looking at, different projects and what they're valued at in comparison to, say, ETH L2s right now. Because obviously Ethereum was the powerhouse last cycle, still a powerhouse no matter what. But, we do have a lot of ETH L2s that, they're going to be doing very similar things to what a lot of Bitcoin L2s are aiming to do, right? So, we got Polygon sitting at 8.7 billion in valuation right now. We got Arbitrum, Optimism, Starknet, Manta. We got a ton of these right now that are existing. Even like a brand new one like Manta that launched, I think, a month, 2 months ago, something like that. We're sitting at 750 million in market cap, 3 billion fully diluted. And what's interesting to me is that, there is so much activity going on, on all of these L2s. But Bitcoin L2s specifically, just their valuations are completely tiny, absolutely tiny in comparison. I'm going to start by bringing up one of the most prominent that I've seen. So we've got BVM right here. So this is Bitcoin Virtual Machine. We're going to dive into the website. And like I said, this is just going to be, I'm just going to show you guys some basic valuations, and a thesis on why I really can see these long-term, I don't want to say completely taking over ETH L2s and other layer 2s on other networks, but this is definitely something that is extremely undervalued right now in the space. So we got Bitcoin L2 as a service. So this is BVM, so powerful infrastructure and tools to build and scale your own Bitcoin L2. So this is like basically a Bitcoin L2 builder. It's modular, so you can take from existing L2s, anything like I was just talking about actually. Optimism, Celestia, you can take certain parts of each of these other L2s and, stack them together almost for certain functionality reasons for whatever you want, So BVM is kind of a powerhouse. They got a bunch of stuff, going on in the works. They actually just launched Naka Chain, which what I believe is, I think it's for gaming mainly. But again, so the valuation, just looking at a project like BVM, so we're sitting around fully diluted 68 million in market cap. So this is one of the newer, and I'd say probably the most prominent Bitcoin L2 that's, again, like a newer one. Obviously we have Stacks. Stacks itself has been around for a while. That is like the top Bitcoin L2. Stacks has been around for years now, sitting at 5 billion. This is one of the only ones that, has the market share in which it really is valued where it should be. But like I'm saying, there are so many new Bitcoin L2s in just the Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem that are so slept on, and just market cap wise, I think the risk to reward is just, it's incomparable, to be honest. So this is like a good picture here talking about a bunch of different projects in the Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem. So like I said, I'm gonna bring up a bunch here, just tell you guys, show you guys charts, market cap, and just why I think the value is going to be flowing into these versus, other L2's on ETH or other chains. Because we're talking about the actual Bitcoin, right? When we're talking about real innovation on the God chain, the chain of all chains, Bitcoin, when you start bringing real value, real DeFi into, into the ecosystem on the biggest chain that exists today, right? I think just that alone is a huge value proposition, because many people now outside of, crypto Twitter and our crypto bubble are very familiar with Bitcoin, obviously. But to see, real financial applications being built on Bitcoin using Bitcoin security and trust, I feel like the value proposition for that is, unlike anything. I think just way bigger than, even anything on ETH right now. And so these Bitcoin layer 2s, so a lot of these aren't necessarily related to, BRC20s and a lot of these meta protocols that are, actually built on Bitcoin L1. A lot of these use different kind of infrastructure to build, just to add different layers of security, functionality, whatever you want to call it, just on top of Bitcoin. Stacks, for example, uses smart contracts to, add a lot of these, real DeFi applications onto Bitcoin. Just add a lot more functionality, and a lot of these other platforms are doing the same. And that's kind of what, BVM is doing. They're a modular Bitcoin L2. And if you look at this chart again, as you can see, there are a ton of them. It stems even from just like Lightning Network, all the way from Stacks. Most of these are actual projects. Some of them don't have tokens, but we're going to jump into a few here that, I really do see very great long-term potential. So like I said, we got BVM here. I think BVM too, obviously the chart has pumped over the last few days, but I think if this does have a retrace of some sort, this definitely is going to be probably a top player for Bitcoin DeFi over the next maybe 3 to 6 months, upwards of 12 months from now. And like I said, it's, the team for BVM specifically, I've seen them building constantly on Bitcoin, different applications and stuff, before this. So I do trust this team to actually deliver, and they continue to deliver on a daily basis. BVM is a very strong project. So let's jump into another one here. Let me see. So another one too is gonna be Mint Layer. Mint Layer is, like I said, it's another newer Bitcoin L2, but this one is just sitting at 51 million in market cap, fully diluted 184 million. And like I said, a lot of these projects and protocols, they're going to do somewhat similar things, just adding that functionality onto Bitcoin in one way or another. But Mint Layer is definitely very strong. And the thing about these two that I like is I'm a very technical investor. When I see charts that look good with strong fundamentals, that's usually such a key factor for me to be really diving in and looking deep into certain narratives, into coins, into projects. And like I said, Mint Layer here looks really good. Has been on a great dip for a while. It's still on a nice dip. In between 40 to 50 cents, I think is, could be a great entry, but not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Do your research. And this one specifically, I don't think it's on a DEX right now, but it's on Mexigate, and all of these exchanges right here. But Mint Layer is definitely a major one, very prominent newer project as well. The same thing they use, I don't want to dive into them deep like that, but again, they use kind of smart contracts and different infrastructure to provide, all these different types of applications on Bitcoin. So Let me see here. We're gonna do another one. So let's jump into, even two that I want to bring up are some, just projects that are related to the Bitcoin DeFi sector as well. But another one that I do like is actually BEFI. If I could type this today. So this one specifically, they're like a trading terminal for, BRC20s to be able to trade them on your MetaMask, trade anywhere, everywhere. This one I'm not allocated in yet. I did just call this, but this one is definitely pretty interesting. A lot of good stuff going on with this project. But this one I really could see, taking off over the next few weeks, especially going into the Bitcoin halving. I do feel like Bitcoin DeFi is really going to pick up. And, once the halving hits, obviously Runes is going to be a huge narrative for that. But I really can see a lot of Bitcoin DeFi projects just, the slow growth. Maybe they pull back a little bit. But I feel like right now is like one of the key and just major beginnings to a lot of this, right? I'm trying to see because there were like 3 or 4 prominent ones that I wanted to bring up today. So, another one too. So we got Savum here. Satoshi VM. Satoshi Virtual Machine is yet another one. Another Bitcoin L2. And the same thing. You guys can kind of see by the charts that most of these have launched, recently within the last 2 months to maybe a month. And they've all been kind of consolidating. They haven't done too much yet. And I think because this narrative is not completely taken off yet. But again, I kind of look at these in comparison. You got Satoshi VM, BVM, a lot of these other ones, even Mint Layer. If you compare these to, a lot of these Ethereum L2's, like I was saying, Starknet, Optimism, Arbitrum, even some of the smaller cap ones, just having like similar functionalities for whatever these projects do in comparison to what these Ethereum L2's are doing. Again, the value proposition, these valuations are very undervalued, bottom line, in comparison to these ETH L2's, in which I can see Bitcoin L2's completely taking over at some point, potentially even taking over a lot of ETH L2's. I think if we just see a real powerhouse of a player, like Stacks, and Stacks has been innovating a lot recently too with lots of different stuff. They got an upgrade coming up as well. And I think once we see real, true, DeFi just being constantly, I don't even know the word. Just once we just see a lot of liquidity, a lot of money flowing into these Bitcoin L2's, I think the value, the repricing of all these assets in this narrative is going to be very dramatic. Going to be very good, bottom line. But again, Satoshi VM, that was another one. This was very hyped on Ape Terminal months ago. There was FUD, a lot of FUD. That's why this chart looked like this. It dipped. But again, times like this, I tell you guys all the time on the channel, when you see projects that launch, again, strong fundamentals, strong narrative, and the chart looks very good for entries, getting in at the base floor or the bottom of a lot of these projects, or even like a Mint Layer on a great dip, that's going to be, that's going to be the best time to be jumping into a lot of these projects, right? So let me see. There's another one too we got is Merlin Chain. So this one has been very hyped for a long time. So their token is going to be Merl. Let's go to Merlin Chain. So I personally have never participated in the Merlin Chain ecosystem, but they do have some tokens out for different projects already, and kind of the same thing, which is what I've been waiting for, for Merlin Chain specifically, but across the board in this narrative is, exactly what these charts are pulling. They had their hype a while ago, they fizzled out, and now that I feel like their hype is starting to come back, and all these charts are going to start, honestly, just pumping pretty hard at some point. Because what's interesting to me is that I think even like a CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, I don't know if CoinMarketCap has this, but they should be having a category for Bitcoin L2's, I feel like, I think that would be a very interesting thing, because then imagine like just Bitcoin L2's as their own tab. Right now, they'd probably be down here, very small in total market cap, maybe in between 5 to 10 billion, I'd guess, in comparison to 35 billion. You know, I think the value prop here is just, I think it's nuts. So getting in on the ground floor of a lot of these Bitcoin L2s is going to be very key. And I think this is where a lot of gains are going to come from. And obviously you still got BRC20s, SRC20s, and runes coming out. You still got Track Network killing it, doing its thing. But like I'm saying, I think Bitcoin DeFi as an entire narrative, it's just, I think this is going to be one of the most slept on rallies and repricing of value over the next 6 to 12 months that a lot of people specifically are just not paying attention to. Obviously the ones that have been in the Bitcoin DeFi, ecosystem or space right now over the last few months, like obviously you guys know, and that is mainly why you're in this ecosystem, right? Because you know how undervalued this stuff is in comparison to other things in crypto. But again, if we start seeing real innovation, on some of these chains, and we start seeing, people eventually swapping over, let's say Merlin chain or Stacks, memes become an absolute meta. We've had Base, Solana, all these other chains getting a lot of hype. But, imagine like a Bitcoin L2 network starting to get a ton of hype on memes and stuff. We had Merlin chain with like Hoo, but that was not, it wasn't as big as, what it could have been in comparison to a lot of the, again, Solana, Base degens. I think at some point it's just, these are going to take off unlike anything I've ever seen. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring up today. You guys can check a lot of these out. And obviously when you're talking about Stacks here too, you got Alex, there's a ton of different protocols being built on top of Stacks, a ton of protocols that eventually will be being built on top of all of these networks. I feel like the attention is just going to shift to this narrative at some point. And I do feel like just being allocated into even some of these projects will be very key to, long-term success. Because if you don't believe it, you don't believe in Bitcoin DeFi, you're almost not believing in the future of Bitcoin, right? That's how I look at it. I think just that thesis alone, the fact that such innovation is going to be built on Bitcoin, and you're going to have, full out retail looking heavily into it, which I feel like in the last bull runs or whatever, from what I saw, I feel like it was not really a heavy narrative that people, wanted to pay attention to, wanted to even look at. But this cycle now, it's like we got new projects popping up left and right on top of Bitcoin, whether it is a BRC20 type project, as in being built on Bitcoin itself, or Bitcoin layer 2s, trying to provide more infrastructure to Bitcoin in whatever way that they seem or deem fit. I think that's where attention is going to be flowing. And bottom line, that's it. There's a ton of protocols I could jump into and continue to talk about here, but this is just a basis of everything that's going to be happening. And again, just pay attention to these projects, do your own research, look into a lot of these Bitcoin DeFi projects. And if you find one, again, at like very small market cap, even like Satoshi VM, 50 million, 60 million, there's no way that this narrative doesn't just have, that initial huge pump. Again, we just had BVM, rip pretty hard over the last, like I'd say maybe a week, from late March into now. It was bottomed out for a while, starting to move. But I think from here, it's just going to be up only for this narrative at this point, to be honest. So that's what I got for you guys today. I think it's super key to pay attention to this stuff. I don't want to sway you guys into buying any of these individually, because there are already so many different protocols out. And on top of these protocols, under them, there's already a ton of different projects. So it is a very hefty narrative to dive into and look into, but I think allocating into a lot of these, it's going to be similar to allocating into like Polygon or Arbitrum or a Manta, but being way earlier than even when these ETH ones are launching, because they're launching at way higher valuations, right? So that's what I got for you guys today. Super interesting. Finally, it looks like this narrative is starting to get the attention it deserves. Because obviously I love Bitcoin DeFi. I've been a huge advocate for so long. But recently I haven't talked about it too much because, I also focus on many different narratives. As you guys know, if you've seen my channel, I love RWA, AI, Bitcoin DeFi, and gaming. The main four, even DePIN a little bit. But like I said, I like to go where the attention is going to go, and that's mainly where I'm focusing at right now. And this is just a very prominent narrative that's really just hasn't started yet. So that's what I got for you guys today. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks.